Hey guys, so we're on page 1 of the packet, and this is 9.2, special right triangles. So what you need to do is pause this video and do this first part. So these special right triangles, under it says find the hypotenuse using Pythagorean theorem. So go ahead and pause the video and do this real quick, and then I'll show you the answers and you can see if you got this correct. So you're trying to figure out what the hypotenuse is for each of these, and then use that pattern and write it down here with variables. Okay, so hopefully you've gotten 12 root 2, 9 root 2, and 4 root 2 for each of these. So for a 45, 45, 90 triangle, you know that these two sides are going to be the same. So we're just going to give them a variable of n. Alright, so if they're both n, and if you look at this pattern here, what happens when you go to the hypotenuse, it just is that number, n, multiplied by the square root of 2. So that is your pattern, and that's going to be important, and you'll need that later. So you're going to do the same thing down here. So if you've not done this, use Pythagorean theorem to solve for these three sides of these triangles. Okay, so I want you to check your work and make sure you did that correctly. You should be noticing a pattern. You have 8 root 3, 11 root 3, 7 root 3. These longer sides, for the shorter sides, you just have that number without the root 3. And then for the hypotenuse, it is twice the length of the shorter side. So if we are labeling this, we're going to call the short leg n. And then look at the change from here to here. It's that same number, but then you multiply it by the square root of 3. So that becomes n root 3. And then the hypotenuse is twice as large as your number, so 2n. And this happens every single time. So this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So across from 30 is the short leg, and you'll hear me call it the short leg later. The long leg is across from 60, and then the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. Alright, let's go to the page. Alright, now we're on to page 2. So I've got the steps listed over here. Label the triangle, solve for n, plug in. Okay. Okay. Now all of the triangles are labeled, and you can tell by all the white out, I'm not very good at labeling them. So we have n, and n root 2 for all 4 of these. Just make sure that all your legs are labeled with an n, and all your hypotenuses or hypotenuses are labeled with n root 2. Okay, so our next step, step number 2, it says to solve for n. Well, we know that n equals 2 because it gives it to us right there. I'm going to zoom this in so it's closer. So if we know that n is 2, we can plug 2 in and solve for this side of the triangle, which I'm actually going to change pen colors so we can see the difference. So this one is going to equal 2 because if this leg is 2, the other leg is also 2. For 45, 45, 9 triangles, the legs are the same thing. So there we go, v equals 2, and then we want to plug 2 in, and that becomes 2 root 2. So we take this 2, plug it in right there, and our u is 2 times the square root of 2. Okay, so really don't overthink this. It's pretty simple. This leg is 2, that leg is 2, this is going to be 2 root 2. It's just nice because you can solve for this when you only have one side. So with Pythagorean theorem, you have to have 2 sides. For special rights, you only have to have one of the 3 sides. Okay, same idea here. You want to solve for n. Well, we know that n is already 2 root 2. Okay, perfect. And then we want to take that 2 root 2 and we want to multiply it by the square root of 2. Because this is what n equals. So we want to take 2 root 2 and we want to multiply it by the square root of 2. So already see why we're doing this. Our n by itself is 2 root 2. To make it the hypotenuse, you have to multiply whatever that is by the square root of 2. So 2 square root of 2 times square root of 2, just that ends up canceling out and it just becomes 2. So this side is going to be 4. So our x is 4, our y is 2 root 2. Okay, so all you're doing is you solve for n. Once you have n, then you plug it in. So if you want to solve for n root 2, you have to plug whatever that is. In this case, it's 2 root 2, in for n. And multiply it by the square root of 2. Okay? Moving on, we've got 2 root 6 is what n equals. Okay? And we want to multiply this by the square root of 2. So if we want the square root of 2, you have to take 2 root 6 and multiply it by the square root of 2. And then remember, you cannot touch that 2, but you can multiply these together because they're both under the square root. Now you're not done. The answer is not 2 root 12. You have to simplify the radical. So 4 and 3 go into 12. So it becomes 2 times 2 times the square root of 3. So 4 root 3. So x is going to be 4 root 3. And then y is just going to be the same as this, 2 root 6. But it's the same process as we did before. So our n is 2 root 6. Boom, there it is. And our n root 2 is just whatever you have for n times the square root of 2. That's all you're doing. And then it ends up being quite a few steps. But if you can skip any of these steps, if you can see that the square root of 12 goes directly to 2 root 3, go for it. And then this one, your y will also be 9 root 2 over 2. And then we just need to solve for our x. So we want to take our 9 root 2 over 2, and we want to multiply it by the square root of 2. And so remember, that's the same as multiplying something by the square root of 2 over 1. So it becomes 9 times 2 over 2, and then those cancel out. So we'll end up with 9 right there. Okay, real quick, I want you to turn to page 7, I believe. Yeah, because there's an example that is not there that you will see a lot. So page 7, number 7. All right, I'll say that one more time. Page 7, number 7. That's where we are. I'm going to go ahead and label this n root 2, n, and n. So this one gives us the hypotenuse. None of the ones on the notes do that. So we're just going to now just follow the steps, which first one, label the triangle. We did that. Second one, solve for n. So this one's a little different. You've got to solve for n, but you're given n root 2. So you set them equal. Oh my goodness, now we have square root in the bottom. So remember, that's not allowed, so you have to multiply by root 2 over root 2. So these multiply across and become 18 root 2. These multiply across and just become 2. And then you can divide. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So 9 root 2 is what happens. So what did we just solve for? We solved for n. Now we know that n equals 9 root 2. And we know that both of these are labeled as n. So this side is 9 root 2. This side is 9 root 2. Okay? And there's going to be some patterns that we're going to talk about. But just to point one of them out to you, anytime the hypotenuse is a whole number, so 18, for example, all you have to do is cut that in half and put a root 2 on it. So let's say this was 16, then the answer would be 8 root 2, because it cut in half and put a root 2 on it. So you can use this to solve every time. It will work, or you can start to realize those patterns and use them to your advantage. Okay, let's go back. We got a few more problems, and we'll be done. I am going to zoom this out a little bit, and I'm going to use this triangle, and I'm going to label these n root 3 and 2n. So our hypotenuse is going to be 2n, our long leg is n root 3, our short leg is n. And I'm going to do that for 5 through 8. So you go ahead and do that as well. Alright. Awesome. Now I'm going to switch pins. Keep it separate. Okay. First step, solve for n. N is already solved for us here, so that's nice. Oh, can't see it. N equals 2. Great. So we need to plug that in these two places. Plug that in there, plug that in there. So 2 times 2, x is going to equal 4. Okay, that's easy. And then x will then equal 2 root 3 when you plug it in. So all you did was take what n equals and plug it in there. That's easy. Anytime you have a whole number for your n, it's going to be super easy. So let's go to a little more challenging one. This gives us what n root 3 equals. So you want to set that equal. Okay. And we want to get n all by itself. So we've got to divide by root 3. Okay, so n is going to equal, well, we've got 6 over the square root of 3. You can't have that. So you've got to multiply it by root 3 over root 3. And then it becomes 6 root 3 over 3, which simplifies to, oh, that's better, 2 root 3. Alright, that is what our n equals. So that means this side is going to equal 2 root 3. Okay, and then you want to take your n, because that's what we got when we solved for n, and we want to plug it in right there. So basically you need to take whatever this number is and multiply it by 2. Okay, so 2 times the square root of 3 multiplied by 2, 2 root 3 times 2, is going to end up being 4 root 3. And that's what you get for x. Okay, so our y, this side of the triangle is 2 root 3, our x is 4 root 3. Okay, but it's literally the same step every single time. Same steps over and over again. And they're up in the top right-hand corner of your page. Okay, this one, we are given what n equals. So awesome, 4 root 3 over 3. Now, we need to plug this in. So all we are doing is taking 4 root 3 over 3. Goodness, I can't write. And multiplying it by the square root of 3. Because this is n. Let's move it. And then we want to multiply it by the square root of 3 to get the long leg. Okay, so you end up with 4 times 3 over 3. And oh my goodness, look what happens. Those cancel out. And this side is 4. Well, that's nice. That's a pretty number. Okay? And now we take n, plug it in there. So you have 2 times 4 root 3 over 3. And you see there's more white out, because I messed up again, because I can't multiply 2 and 4. But that equals 8 root 3 over 3. And then that's what you solve for this side. So x is going to equal that. 8 root 3 over 3. And that's the length of the hypotenuse right here. Okay? And onward. Last one. We want to, well, not the last one because we have 2 more. The last one of this kind. We want to set n root 3 equal to that. And if you're like, where is she getting these numbers? Well, these are variables, so don't set them equal to it. This, it's going to give you one side. That's the side that you set equal. Okay, and then we want to dissolve. Okay, we want to divide. This is going well. Divide by the square root of 3. Okay, and notice all I did was put it directly next to the 2 in the denominator, because this is already divided by 2, and so we just want to put it next to it. Okay, 15 can divide evenly by 3, so that's nice. And they're both under square root, so you're allowed to do that. So it becomes 3 root 5 over 2. And that is what our n equals. So that's nice. That means this side equals 3 root 5 over 2. And then all we have to do is multiply. So plug that in there. So basically, you multiply this 3 root 5 over 2 times 2, which cancels out the 2 in the numerator and the 2 in the denominator, and you get 3 root 5 for your answer. Alright, go back, make sure you got it. Alright, 9 and 10. You have to really understand what's going on for 9 and 10. So we're going to start with this 45, 45, 90 triangle, and this is our n root 2 side, and I'm going to label this on the inside of this triangle because we're only looking at this triangle right here. Act like this one up here is not there because it's going to confuse you. So we're only looking at this, and eventually we want to work our way over to x. Alright, we can do that. Let's do it. So we have n root 2 equals 8. Okay, wonderful. What's wrong? Goodness. I'm tired. Okay, that's better. N root 2 equals 8. You want to divide by the square root of 2. So you cannot have the square root on the bottom. It's the third time we've done this today, so hopefully it's starting to sink in. You're going to multiply by root 2 over 2 by root 2 over root 2. And it becomes that. So you're just multiplying across. 8 times the square root of 2 is 8 root 2. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. And then it simplifies and becomes 4 root 2. And so this is actually something that I talked about earlier when we went to page 7. I talked about how anytime you have a whole number for a 45, 45, 90 triangle, on a whole number on the hypotenuse, all you have to do is cut it in half and put a root 2 on it. Boom. Same thing happens there. You cut that 8 in half, put a root 2 on it. If you can remember that, it will help you greatly. Alright, now I'm going to take a different color. I'll just use this pencil. And I want to label this 30, 60, 90 triangle. So notice the difference. For the 45, 45, 90 triangle, the length of this is n. But now that we're looking at the 30, 60, 90 triangle, this is now n root 3. So you have to act like this is no longer here on the bottom. And 4 root 2 now equals n root 3. Okay. N root 3 equals 4 root 2. Awesome. Solve for n. Can't have the square root on the bottom. Y'all are going to get good at this, because we'll do it a lot. 4 root 6, that multiplies across, 2 and 3, over 3. So that works. This side is now 4 root 6 over 3. Okay, now we have solved for n. This is what n equals. So if we are looking for our hypotenuse, we just need to take this number, or this number right here, same thing, and we need to multiply it by 2. Which is actually really easy, because you just multiply this, the whole number, by 2, and then you're done. So it just becomes 8 root 6 over 3. So it looks like a crazy ugly number, but all you have to do is multiply the whole number. Okay? You may need to go back and watch that through now that you've written it down, and watch it one more time, because these are by far the hardest problems. And we're going to do one more. So this one starts, you find the number, and you always want to start with the one with the number. So n root 2, n, and n. I labeled it with that color, so I'll solve it with this. Oh goodness. N root 2. I'll write it correctly. There we go. So n root 2 is going to be equal to 7. Divide by the square root of 2, divide by the square root of 2. And so this is the same thing as before, where you cut it in half and put a root 2 on it, but when it's an odd number, it looks a little bit different. So it ends up becoming 7 root 2 over 2, which this is the same thing as cutting that number in half oh gosh, you can't see that. Cutting a number in half and putting a root 2 on it, it just looks funky, but that's okay. So now this side becomes 7 root 2 over 2. And that's what this leg is equal to. So now we want to take this little tiny triangle down here and we want to label it. Nope, it's not in root anything, that's just in. Not doing a very good job of labeling. And good thing I used a pencil. There we go. Now I labeled it correctly. And if you are like, where is she getting these numbers? They're written right here. Across from 30 is in, across from 60 is in root 3, and across from the right angle is 2n. Okay, now, like I said before, for this leg of the 30, 60, 90 triangle, your n is equal to 7 root 2 over 2. But we're acting like that is not there. So if we cover up this top triangle, now our 2n is equal to 7 root 2 over 2. Okay, so all we have to do is solve for n, and then we're done because that's the side that we're looking for. So we want to divide by 2, which this 2 is in the denominator, so just multiply it by the 2 in the denominator. So instead of dividing by 2, we're now dividing by 4, and that is what our n equals. So that's the number we're looking for. So really, if you can follow the steps and figure it out, then you'll be fine. Just make sure that you're diligent about solving or labeling these correctly, always solving for n, and then plugging in back in.